and a massive theme of the movie, obviously it's called Fight Club, is the use of violence and aggression as a means of getting that transformation. So I'll let you go first on that. Like, what do you think about what is the value of aggression and developing your capacity for violence and you know doing those things physically?
The value of like violence and aggression, I'd say in recent times has been like diminished because there's not a necessity for the community that you live in to be protected at all times. Because we've like grown to civilizations to a civilized age where on average we're so much more peaceful than it used to be. Whereas back in the day, like when we were in smaller tribes and communities, it was necessary to have this strong dependence on violence and aggression for the safety of the community. But like due to the fact that we've come into a more peaceful age, you would assume that the value of violence is gone, and it is gone, but that doesn't mean that the capacity for it has gone with it. Like men, especially compared to women, because of our testosterone levels on average, you still have that urge to be violent and be like have rough play, and it's so necessary for men to do some sort of martial art or some sort of physical sport for their own like physical health and mental health.
Mm-hmm.
And the value of violence has gone down, but the importance of it, maybe on an individual level, maybe the importance of violence and aggression has kind of transferred from a communal level, like community-based level, in terms of safety for the community, and it's like transferred into the individual level, because the individual still has this urge and capacity for it, so it's important to them, but it can't be just like left untapped and like untamed. It needs to be tamed and be controlled for it to be valuable rather than destructive. So that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly my thoughts on it as well. This is as you said, the need for it in society has gone down, but we've evolved for millions of years with this. It's like it's almost a fundamental biological drive that we have, and I think if you deny that biological drive, we have that drive for aggression, then it will become repressed and it will become part of the shadow, which I think
Yeah.
is maybe partly why this movie is so relevant to men in modern times, because because like Carl Jung spoke about, the desires which are most commonly uh, are suppressed and part of the shadow are sexual desires and aggression, um, which I think goes to show the sort of importance of aggression, and in modern culture, as we've surpassed the need for it, and obviously reducing violence is probably a positive thing for society and culturally. It leaves us with a more stable society, and you wouldn't want people going around starting fights all the time.
No.
But we pay the price in terms of not meeting that innate internal desire we have for aggression. As you said, particularly for men, due to the higher testosterone levels, this is what maybe the reason why testosterone developed, so that we have this capacity for aggression. And when we deny that, it's not good for the psyche, and probably leads to some unfulfillment. So yeah, I think it's important. And so one of the things you mentioned there actually was finding a way to integrate it in a healthy way through maybe martial arts or sports or different or exercise, but being able to channel that aggression in a healthy way so that it's not repressed, but
Yeah.
that you're also not so it's integrated, but it's also controlled, and it's not doesn't end up being destructive. And yeah, we'll talk about it more in the section kind of about the rise of the Project Mayhem and the pitfalls of the philosophy. But I think it's definitely one of them, how the aggression becomes out of control, and like the pleasure from using that aggression goes too far and goes towards complete destruction.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like aggression will always manifest itself somewhere in the psyche and the body, and like it's up for the individual to take responsibility for that and manifest it in a positive way and controlled way, or let it run rampant and it could manifest itself in like I don't know, like domestic violence or like just bad character.
Yeah.
On a day-to-day basis, maybe, I don't know.
No, yeah, I think that's absolutely right. That if you, when things, you know, with the shadow, Chiron talks about how these desires, they will, in the shadow, these repressed drives will make themselves known, but it will often come in sabotaging your own goals, which maybe the persona is pursuing, or the image you're trying to project towards other people. The shadow will sabotage that, and so yeah, I think if you don't have that integrated, then bad things will happen. And I think yeah, think there's this idea. I'm not really sure where I've heard it, but that weak men are dangerous because those are the ones with these repressed desires, and if the opportunity comes, they will manifest it. It comes back to this idea we spoke about of morality often being confused with cowardice, because these people are not don't follow the law, for example, because they're a good person and they wouldn't want to hurt someone. It's because they're afraid of the consequences and they're not strong enough to do it. But when the opportunity does come, they would implement destruction and probably gain a fair amount of joy from it, as that desire they've been denying manifests itself in destruction.
Yeah, it kind of refers back to what we talked about when it in terms of the documentary Woodstock and that festival.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, well, that movie, it was around the time of Fight Club as well. It was slightly after Fight Club was released, and that's one of the things they mentioned in the documentary, how perhaps like the culture at the time, like Fight Club was a big thing culturally for people, and it had a lot of violence in it, but it perhaps reflected a lot of the resentment that people had, especially as
possibly for themselves, maybe.
Sorry?
Like maybe like possible resentment for themselves, or how have I let myself become this consumerist, like cog in the machine, or cog in the machine, sorry. When you say it was around the same time, was that the book was released at the same time, or
I think the movie was out before
right.
stock,
yeah. Okay.
But yeah, it's interesting you say that perhaps a resentment towards themselves. I'd maybe say, but most people involved wouldn't have the awareness to maybe think that. I think because obviously resentment towards the establishment of the festival, and perhaps rightfully so, because there's such poor infrastructure and it had been a big disappointment, and everything was very expensive. They had reasons to be resentful. And when the opportunity came to manifest that resentment through destruction, perhaps those internal drives that aren't met in their daily lives manifest themselves.
Yeah,